And now for something a little bit different. Hopefully you'll all stick around for this. Now, this is a 7-year-old book, but it has a lot of memories for me collecting the toys. Now, I can show you right now, these are not the exact toys. There's Orko. And those are some of the latest toys. But the original toys came out in 81 through 87. And with each toy came a mini comic. Now, this book is the mini comic collection. Now, what it does is that essentially it world builds. So these comic books lasted from 81 through 87. Then you have the She-Ra Princess of Power comics. You have the comic books from 89 that had Space He-Man and Space Skeletor, which did not do very well. Then you had the Val Staples 2000X He-Man, and then finally the classics from 2013 to 2015. This is that collection. And what makes it important is that it world builds. I mean, and it has a nice little ribbon cover bookmark. I bought this for $40. So the spine is not in great condition, but it's like a Bible, okay, like the New Testament. It has everything in here. So I'm just going to go through these really quick. So these are the original stories. Now, when I was a kid, my original toys were dolls, like giraffe dolls and koala bear dolls and cat and dog dolls. And then eventually I collected Fisher-Price toys. Well, I didn't collect them. My mom bought them for me, okay? Fisher-Price typewriter, Fisher-Price clock, Fisher-Price cash register, Fisher-Price farm set, the little people, the little dog. Now, this is basically what you're looking at here is the world building of He-Man and Skeletor. Who was Beastman? What was Eternia? What was the Sorceress? The Sorceress and Teela went through many manifestations, incarnations. Kind of like when you look at Superman and Batman comic books from the 1930s to the 1950s and then 70s, 90s until now, okay? So the Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age of He-Man all comes from here. And so, where was I getting to? After the Fisher-Price, I got a Fisher-Price Castle, and then that led to Castle Grayskull and He-Man and Skeletor. Now, for me, I think I started collecting those toys when I was about maybe 6 years old. Because I think 5 years old was the last time I had Fisher-Price toys, okay, and dolls. The little pop marble thing little vacuum cleaner that you got from Fisher-Price, all those toys. The telephone, all that stuff. So this is basically a collection. Much like gum that would come in Garbage Pail Kids cards. For me, this was my first, besides Garfield the cat, I mean, this was before video games, before PlayStations and Xboxes and quad-core PCs and Steam Decks and Nintendos. This was the thing that I had. I didn't know Dungeons & Dragons was only about 7 years old when He-Man debuted. From the Bible to the mini-comics to the cartoons and to the toys and cartoons, because you needed the cartoons to sell the toys. Much like Sony with the PlayStation, Nintendo with their Nintendo products, Mattel was like that original badass of trying to sell a product like toys. Not consoles, not discs or cartridges or games, but toys and accessories. This is further along when we meet Man-E-Faces for the first time. A lot of these characters do translate to the Filmation cartoon. And we get a glimpse of these figures. Each figure did something. Man-E-Faces, his head would turn. Same thing with Triclops, his eyes would turn. Trapjaw had the metal appendage. Beastman, Merman, Skeletor looked the same. Evil Lyn was a female, a darker version of Teela. Mosquitor squirted blood in his chest. You had one of the Horde or Snake Men blast attack would fly apart. Rio Blast was a cowboy, and he would open up his chest. Every character had a gimmick, hero side, villain side. It was always amazing to see what these toys could do. Cyclone would spin like a tornado. And the playsets were really cool. I mean, you had Castle Grayskull was like the first one, but not as interesting. You had Point Dread with the little Talon fighter on the top of it. But Snake Mountain was even better because you had that microphone and you go, ah, 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 He-Man, ah, ah, right? And you would have the mouth open and close. And part of Snake Mountain is featured in here. But what was amazing was that you had like just world building. You had to figure out what Prince Adam was about because there was no Prince Adam. He-Man was a barbarian in the beginning, and then you had Prince Adam. Then you had the heroes and villains. Then their Sorceress and Teela were two different people. And you had to figure out what the Sorceress looked like. She wasn't green skinned with a cobra head. She had an eagle head. She was peach cream skin color. There were different kinds of creatures. And there's different interviews in this book that talk about how they had ethnic looking characters who would look Oriental, who would look, well, not Oriental, I guess maybe that would probably be the right word since Eternia is a fantasy planet and not Earth. So you wouldn't say Asian, you wouldn't say African American, you would say person of darker color skin or of a color skin. It's just the way it would be. But you would have ethnicities on different sides, both heroes and villains. Was something Casey Kasem was always adamant about when he was trying to do Transformers. He wanted to see not just the evil Sultan, but he wanted to see the good Sultan. He wanted to see good guys, just nerds, the geeks, the freaks, all kinds of Indian portrayals. And so you have there was just no boundaries. Much like Star Trek, you would see humans and creatures of all kinds. Now, I'm just flipping through random pages. This is Stratos' wife. I never even knew he had a fucking wife. I know he had a sister named Hawk, but not a wife. So there's the beginnings of Avion. So as you go through each story, now these are stories were about the size, I would say, you see this PS Vita cart, this box here. That's how big the mini comic books were. So you get the toy, you get the packaging, and then you would get the mini comic. And the mini comic was approximately this size. Now, unfortunately, well, my family sold all my toys long ago when I was a kid, but we did have, we didn't keep the mini comics though, but I do remember some of that stuff. Some of the ones, I think the one with Geldor, which was a Mr. T looking Mohawk black dude who was against He-Man. That was the first one I could remember off the top of my memory. The very first comic books were actually, for me, were Viewmaster discs. So if you recall Viewmaster, you would get these 3D discs, and then you could see a scene in 3D. That was our virtual reality back then, kids. We didn't have Oculus Rift or virtuality from the 90s. We had Viewmasters, and we would see things in 3D. So this was the mini comic size. So back to Stratos and his wife. These were the memories I would have. I would hold on to. Like, look at all these different kinds of enemies and stuff. Now, some of these showed up in one comic book, and that was it. Others showed up for multiple mini comics. Stratos used to have peach skin, and he used to be Skeletor's nemesis. Then he became a good guy. Then he had the gray feathers instead of the peach feathers. Trapjaw had a light green skin tone, and then he had blue. Changing the colors, figuring out what the lore is. You know, you have He-Man. Now, this was based off of Conan the Barbarian. But you had to figure out there was a good guy, there's a bad guy. The good guy has a friend, the bad guy has a friend. This is what they were trying to do. And it all started out with Skeletor wanting to bang Teela and then take Castle Grayskull, but he had to marry her first. So here comes some more trouble, taking down the guards. So Teela's knocked out by Evil Lyn. And very interesting stuff. I mean, there's different characters. The kind of characters you'd see in Filmation. Skeletor looks a little bit more like his Filmation counterpart. Without those 2-inch crooked teeth, those long teeth that he had in the beginning. So he evolved a bit. It's like reading the Archie comics with Sonic, where there were some plot holes about, and they had to rebuild. Like Sonic started out as a guy who met Princess Sally, but then they always knew each other since little kids in the Acorn Kingdom. I don't know what the hell that was about. Now, this is the one where Roboto is under Skeletor's control. Now, in the mini-comic, Man-at-Arms creates Roboto. In the cartoon, I didn't know, that actually Roboto came from outer space. But they retro fixed that uh, so that Roboto is a creation of Man at Arms as well as Faker. But it's debatable whether Faker is Man at Arms creation or Skeletor's creation. But I like that he's Man at Arms is the one that really makes stuff. Of course, Triclops could have built Faker, but we never really see that explanation. Rock on and Stondar. So some of the figures like Orko would spin around when you pull a ripcord, and he would spin around in circles. And there was a little matching game. And these two were rocks that would unfold like origami into people. Cobra Khan would squirt water. Webstore had a grappling hook gimmick. So each villain and hero had a gimmick. By the way, I'm keeping an eye on the Eternia playset that's supposed to be crowdfunded. I really want to get that. But it takes about the Eternia playset takes about almost 60 inches of width, okay? And it's almost about 30 inches tall. It's a big thing. It looks like the biggest Hot Wheels like racing set you've ever seen. It's 3 towers. Anyway, this is all the world building, all the heroes, all the villains. They keep using the same ones over and over. This is Lee Nordling, who was coming up with different ideas. He was the editor for the Minicomics. You have different writers and different artists. Bruce Timm is not in this book, sadly. Some people were in it for the money, and other people really liked the He-Man lore. Other people were trying to come up with what happened to Skeletor and King Randor after the Snake Men, the 2002 cartoon. Like, what were they going to do? That there was going to be a trick behind a peace treaty, something like that. There were all these ideas that never made it to the finished page. This is like, if you had to go to a desert island, this would be the perfect book to take with you. A lot of great stuff in here. This has to do with Rio Blast. Rio Blast was not realized he's realized in the classics, but not in just about every character was realized in the classics, but not in the 2000X. I mean, I can imagine I would have given him sort of a Clint Eastwood, the good, the bad, and the ugly with a big hat and a sarape around his cloth, and he would take off the hat and then put on the gun over his head. Because that's his gimmick. He can turn into a living gun. A living weapon. That's his gimmick. So there's different. Like Moo Mesa, or Sunset Riders. He just has this gimmick. So every character had a gimmick. There was diversity in everything. There was no such thing as no diversity. I mean, you could say Orko is neither male or female, but I think Orko's male. Oops, Skeletor's up to his old tricks. Star Child is the one character that never had a figure. I remember He-Man was saying, Star Child, be careful, Did anybody remember Star Child? Anyway, so you have He-Man and Skeletor knocking each other out. They both seem to have gained power. So this has to do with this is the Eternia playset that's going to be crowdfunded for the fall. So it's in between Snake Man. This is a large set, okay? There is no miniature version of this. There is no mega construction version. There's only 2 versions. The one that's been out for almost 40 years, and then this one that's going to be made for classics. So it's worth, if that bitch is over $275, I ain't buying it. I have a limit here. And here, after the world building you get for He-Man it was on the eve of Hero that the He-Man line got canceled. And now this was going on too at the same time. You had Princess of Power in 84. Most of this stuff, it started out with the comic book ideas. You had comic book format. But then later on, I'll show you a little bit here. It turned into more of a story for girls. Suddenly, Catra rushed out of the forest. What do you want, Featherhead? Catra, what are you doing here? Peekaboo asked. I was taking a cat nap. Now go away. Peekaboo said as she walked away. But she thought, I'm going to tell She-Ra about this. Yes, tell the secrets. Yes, this story for girls. I don't know. What they said in the book here is that this is according to Mattel. This is not me saying this, okay? I don't want you to call me a misogynist motherfucker, okay? So they said that girls don't read the comic books, so they made it simple and dumbed down so that this is the kind of comic books that girls would read while they play with She-Ra and Peekaboo. There's Sweet Bee. Oddly enough, the female Orko, I forgot her name. Razzle Dazzle, I forgot her name. I forgot the character's name. She's not in this at all. We don't see her at all, but she is in the cartoon. Lukey's in this. Do you see him? There he is, and he's got a moral. Let's see what the moral is, because that's the important thing. Uh, True friends can feel things about each other that no one else can feel or see. If you look inside yourself, you'll know how true a friend can be. Oh, that's good. Now, this is the unspeakable. I like these minions, though, but this is the unspeakable part of the dark part of He-Man's life. This is the 1989 to early 90s He-Man with this is Errol McCarthy. So this is the space He-Man, and the story here is that He-Man gets pulled into the future of Eternia. It's just He-Man and Skeletor. There's nobody else, so they go to the future together. Skeletor is rebuilt, and this is Battle for the Crystal. This is Volume 1. So there's only 4 issues of this, but it's not the most memorable. I think Skeletor sounded like this. We will get He-Man. We shall get He-Man. He didn't sound anything like the Skeletor we're used to. And it was I have to go back and watch those cartoons, see if I can understand any of it. But it's Eternia of the future. You see the different planets. Mordor's that skull-shaped planet, I think that Skeletor hides out at. Now, this is familiar territory to me more because after 10 or more years, He-Man came back. He-Man came back for the 20th anniversary. And Val Staples really held... By the way, does anybody know what happened to He-Man.org? Why is it strictly a forum? Was it Val attacking the fans? Does anybody know? Nobody knows. Nobody knows the answer to this. Val Staples either doesn't like the fans anymore, because remember, it was the one place where you have the power. Now it's just no power. It's just a cheaper Reddit. That's what happened to it. So this one, I mean, it's a beautiful. This is the comic. These are large, regular size, typical comic book format, not mini comics. There is Teela. Who doesn't like Teela? And that is Teela. That's the way Teela should always look. But I'll tell you this. The ones in here are very good introductions. You just see 2 of them, okay? They're just 2 comic books. But to really understand Val Staples comic books, I would suggest you get this collection. There's a lot of collections on Amazon and eBay. Look for these comic books, the Val Staples one, Tales of the Realm and Masters of the Universe. Great comic books. I covered them all throughout this channel, so look for those. I'll put a playlist if you like one. And then we have the 2015 Masters of the Universe Classics, which dealt with the future. It dealt with essentially what it was going to be the death of King Grayskull, going back in Eternia's past and taking over the 3 towers. And you got She-Ra there, you got everyone there fighting at the end. It ends with sort of a prequel to the Space He-Man, the 1990s He-Man. The one thing I noticed was that what they had planned, what Val Staples or the editors wanted, was that Man-at-Arms would get captured by the Snake Man and be turned into a Snake Man. And so this happens in these comic books. But I think it was Clamchamp who kills Clamchamp here, who kills Man-at-Arms. But I like the explanation better from, if I could show you, from the recent comic books, from the DC Comics. So Dark Horse made these Masters of the Universe Classic comic books, but DC Comics actually provided some very good lore. With Thundercats, there was the Injustice crossover, where everybody knew that He-Man and Prince Adam were one and the same. But also, too, I mean, like they showed, I covered this, the what happens when the characters grow up and grow old, possible futures, Teela becoming Serpos. This is the final battles, but this is taking place deep in Eternia's past with King Grayskull and his Masters of the Universe. So it's taking over the 3 towers, and there is Hero. You see a lot more of Hero. What you didn't see in the original mini comic books from the 80s, you now see here. This one deals with what is it? Thunder Punch He-Man? Not Thunder Punch, but Flying Fist He-Man. But it was more of a Evil Lyn story. And then there was a script at the end. So, in short, I really enjoyed... This is a script just showing how the comic books came out. I thoroughly enjoyed... I got this book 2 weeks ago, and I read so much of it. I couldn't stop reading it because it's it was a beautiful piece of art because this was before I collected comic books. I think I stopped collecting He-Man when I was about 12 years old. 1990. I got He-Man toys up until the end of the 80s because there was still like the ones from the movie Gwildor and Blade. But that was it. Now I mean, the ones I collected now, the ones you saw were the ones from 2000X and Revelation, and that's about it. I am looking forward to playset Eternia. Most people are not. That bitch there better not cost more than like 250 or 270. I mean, that's going to be way too expensive. That's including everything for shipping. But the cartoons were great. But I like the 2000X cartoons as far as the animation goes. I do like the 2020 cartoon. There's so many great things. But this is like the best thing you can read, along with the comic books. The comic books you can read after you read this because these build on the lore way more. Like this one, and then the DC Comics run with She-Ra coming back from Adora to She-Ra. Because Adora is, in DC Comics run, Adora is dark as fuck. She is dark. She is menacing and dark. She kills. I think she killed Peekaboo in the DC Comics future. And then she is converted to she comes back to being She-Ra, but she has to fight the witch who was Keldor's mother and all that stuff. And this is the multiverse dealing with a different Keldor, going through the many universes. This is the goddess of Serpos, which is Tila. This is Tila and not the original sorceress from the DC Comics lore. You have the Horakoth, which is Evil Lyn, Sorceress, the Zor goddess, which is Vina, Tila, but the Man-at-Arms daughter Tila, who is Serpos. So Serpos, Zor, and Horakoth, the bat of the Horde, Hordak, three different women, three different goddesses. And between DC Comics, Dark Horse, and the original Mattel run, they produce some really good stuff. So, I mean, this is, if you could get it cheap, like $30, I mean, like this I got really expensive, and the damn thing was split. And here's the thing, too. This was not used. This is brand new. And this was split like in the beginning of the binding. So not a great way, but we'll end up with the front cover. This is where He-Man throws Skeletor around. He says, "Mercy, have mercy on me." And they just run away because they weren't that great an enemy yet. This is like, I think, the first or second issue. Because all he wanted to do was capture Tila, do unspeakable acts upon her, and capture Grayskull. But Skeletor's come a long way. He's the brother to Randor. He is an apprentice to the Snake Man. He's apprentice to Hordak. He knows the dark arts. He's maybe had some kind of relationship with Evil Lyn. You combine the 2002 stories and the classic stories, and there's so much lore here. Before Skyrim, with Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons came before He-Man. And it was like the first of those fantasy. I mean, like Tolkien, you have Tolkien, right? Lord of the Rings. And D&D was a game. But He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was a more modern story with fantasy lore, with the sort of Joseph Campbell elements that, George Lucas based his Star Wars stuff upon. And honestly, it's like, it's a more personal form of D&D. It's a more, you have these personal characters come about. And that's what I enjoyed about it. So I hope you enjoyed my retrospect on this. It wasn't until Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I recorded all the episodes on VHS tapes and VCR. All we had were Betamax tapes, so I never really got to record those episodes of He-Man. I think I did record one or two of the newer show, but that was it. So many of the episodes are free to watch on YouTube. Hopefully it stays that way for a long time, because I would want everyone to get to see that stuff. Don't watch Revelation, that's shit. And if you get to see some of the newer cartoons, there's some clips for free to watch of the 2021 cartoon. I think that's the third season's done, so you can watch that, or on Netflix if you want to watch those episodes. And if you want me to talk more about He-Man, if you want me to succeed where Val Staples failed, please talk to me. I know Pixel Dan covers the figures and the toys like crazy. I'm not Pixel Dan. I'm not some of the other people. I'm just me. I'm just some guy that most people don't even talk to. I don't attract people. It's the truth. I did a whole epic fail with the live stream just now, but this is one of the first things I ever enjoyed. My cousin Gabriel had Skeletor toys. He had only Skeletor and his evil henchman. He didn't have He-Man, only Skeletor. But Skeletor was the one that kept losing all the time. I would say if I had a favorite character, maybe Keldor before he became Skeletor. I liked Keldor because he moved like a ninja in the newer cartoons. Because Keldor was a little bit smarter, but Skeletor was stupid because of Demo Man, which was later added to the lore of the stuff. So much lore, so much out there. Collect the toys. You don't have to collect all the toys. Shout out to Toy Huntress and whoever else. I'll give a shout out to Toy Huntress in the title or maybe in the description. Until then, remember, you have the power.